On a 3 Media.
This is the Book Publicist Podcast, powered by local PR Toolkit. I'm your host, Jason Jones, and I'm a longtime book publicist and agent. We're going to talk to publicists, media, publishers, and authors and give you a peek behind the curtain into the world of book marketing and publicity. So, my marketing and publicity starved author friends, let's go! Jones Literary we just launched a couple of years ago, and I've learned so much in the last 2 years, probably more than I learned in my entire career previously. There's just something about doing it all yourself, for yourself. Totally. Yeah, and it's easy when you're working for someone else to you've got all these ideas that you think you want to execute and that you think you could execute that would be so easy. I could do this, I want to do that, and all of a sudden, when you can take on all those things, you start to figure out that, it's not as easy as maybe you thought it was.
Well, because you're having to do everything. And so you are the accountant, you are the CEO, you are the chief cook and bottle washer. I mean, you're doing everything. And what I find is many of us in the entrepreneurial space, when we become sort of the jack of all trades, we are the master of none. And then whatever it is that we do for others, we don't do for ourselves. So I say it's like the cobbler's children have no shoes.
Right.
Like we do our own social media last. We do our own branding last because we're too busy serving clients. And so you sort of have to stop that crazy wheel and go, okay, wait a minute. If I am going to be known for this thing, I probably need to look like I'm good at that thing for myself. And so it's can really transform your business when you go from just working in your business to working on your business. Right. And it's a mindset. Everything I have found is mindset. It comes down to deciding what or how you're going to do the thing and then just doing it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the toughest things for me has been, and I know you get this, is that I've got so many ideas. There's so many things I want to do. Yeah. I can't do all of them, so pick one. Yeah. And it's which one do I want to do? Which one's the best idea right now? Which one, it's just there's so much. Yeah. Before we get too much further into the conversation, let me introduce you to all of our listeners. Jennifer Willingham is an entertainment executive. She's got extensive experience creating box office hits, New York Times bestsellers, a lot of big events, especially here in the Nashville area. Jennifer is the CEO of Epic Agency, which is really the premier full-service marketing and PR agency in the faith and family space. She has been in this space for many, many years, in the publishing space and entertainment space, that is. I just realized I've said the word space quite a few times in the last few seconds. But she's, in all the years I've been in this business, for probably about the last 15 years, there are a few names that you hear often and always, universally loved, respected people. Jennifer's one of those. I've always, before I got to know her, heard such wonderful things about her as a person and how good she was at what she did. And so thankful that we got to know each other eventually, and hopefully, with what we're doing, we'll have opportunities going forward to work together and get to do some things. She has launched, I think it says here, more than 50 New York Times best-selling books, lots and lots of national bestsellers. And the film thing, you've been really busy working on some big films the last few years, films that a lot of our listeners have probably seen. Overcomer, right? And
Overcomer and War Room, and I Still Believe, which was the one for this year with Jeremy Camp's story, and then I Can Only Imagine, which was the biggest hit of any kind that was independently produced in 2018, which was sort of done by the division of Lionsgate. And then the one that really sort of put us on the map, which I would never say is good cinema, is God's Not Dead. But that was such a box office anomaly, like lightning in a bottle. They were like, oh, wait. And so we had so many people calling going, what did you do? Can you do that for me? I was like, no, I cannot do that for you because it's lightning in a bottle. I can't reproduce that, and it wasn't me. It's never about me. Yeah. But yeah, we've had a good run with films. I've probably worked on more than 30 films now. Been a producer here and there on a couple. And what I really love about films is it's an easier way to market fiction. So we were talking earlier about novels. I do not have the publicizing a novel thing figured out. It's really weird though that with film, it's like a film version of a novel. It's easy. It's so easy to market. Of course, we have lots of money, which makes things always easier. But it's really interesting that does not translate to the page. So I wish Jeannie Wynn is the best at publicizing fiction.
Yeah, Jeannie's great.
So anytime somebody goes, hey, I've got a novel, I'm like, oh, don't tell me about it. Tell Jeannie.
Transitioning to another struggle I know a lot of our listeners have, that I have, is content creation, and that's something that Epic does.
We do a lot of
really, a lot of great work in that space. There's that word again. So let's talk about content creation. There's so much noise out there. How should someone who's getting started in this thing, first of all, they have to understand that there's more to this than just writing a book and existing in people. No one's going to find your book if you're not out there telling folks about it, and if you don't already have an audience, and all those things. How do we create content that is a reflection of who we are and our message, and how do we do that in an effective way? What are the best platforms? Take me through, as if I were a new client.
So I think when we're trying to create content, the first thing I say to clients is, why do you want to write a book? Because usually they come to you and they have self-diagnosed. I am going to be an author. Well, that is awesome. That's a decision. I love that you've made a decision, but tell me why. Because I think some people are not meant to be authors. I think some people are meant to be amazing blog creators. I think some people are meant to be filmmakers. And I just think, depending on their talent and the area they want to speak into, maybe a book is not right for them. And so I sort of, there's this great Henry Ford quote that I'm probably going to butcher. And he said one time, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Mm-hmm. And so he built, one of the first cars. Mm-hmm. So when people come to us and they've self-diagnosed, I want this, I want PR, I want content creation, I sort of step up and go, but why do you want it?
Yeah.
So tell me where you think you want to go.
Yeah.
The content, though, the creation is, I wish people could look at something called the peso model. And so it's this sort of interesting diagram that illustrates paid media, earned media, shared media, and owned media. And so if you think about content creation amongst those four categories, it really gives you a lot of room to work. And so owned media is a blog or something you own. Even if whatever that tool is went away, would you still own the content? Yes. Whereas Facebook is a little bit different and Instagram's a little bit different. And so if you begin to think about all the different categories where you can create content, where you can sponsor content, there's a huge, huge world, and everybody can play at some level. Mm-hmm. And then I think, from there, once you sort of get in your groove and figure out the topics you can speak to, and then the channels and the peso model you want to own, and then we can begin to engage and prescribe, here's the type of content you can create, or here's, in some cases, we create for people. And that becomes tricky because we have to really learn their voice. But we have a staff of great writers who do a good job at that. So I'd love to encourage people to just try it, because I think that none of us are good when we step up to the plate the first time and swing the first time. The bat feels a little unwieldy. Maybe we don't have the right stance. And so only with repetition and practice can we get better. And unfortunately, you have to get better while other people can see you, right?
Yeah.
And so when you put your content out there, you're going to have some typos. I don't care about typos. I sometimes, like, the grammar editor in me is like, oh, that's not where the comma goes. But then I catch myself and go, the authenticity is the beautiful part of this journey. Mm-hmm. And if we change the essence, we lose the magic. Mm. And so people have to figure out what their own magic is and really just keep it the main thing. So what I love is people will say, and when we used to be in publishing houses, you'd have an author come through and you'd get warned ahead of time before they got over to the marketing area, like, oh my goodness, that person is going to be difficult to work with. And I always found that person was not difficult. They just had a very clear idea of who they were and what they wanted to say. And I love that because it gives us a lot to go on. We're not having to teach them who they should be.
Yeah.
They already know.
Yeah.
And so I often, I look, when people say that person is this, that person is that, it's just a snapshot, right? And so even trees in the winter, you don't really recognize. And so the editor who says that person's difficult, their experience was a tree in the winter with no leaves. So my experience is probably going to be a tree in the summer with lots of leaves and a lot of shade and a lot of grace to give.
So, Jennifer, let's talk about the 10 things that your publicist won't tell you but should.
This is one of my very, 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 very favorite subjects.
Okay, well,
I maybe should start giving it as a handout when people come to us for PR work.
Yeah.
Because I think that people don't often know how to be good clients. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's sometimes this weirdness, and that publicists should be way more forthcoming to clients, because we could really help them if we just weren't so scared of how they're going to react. So the number one thing that I think publicists should tell a client, they should tell them, probably won't, is, hey, if media hasn't responded back to my 1,000 pitches, it is you and not them. They are just not that into you. Because, media don't like to say no. And so, we have a little rule, and we bend the rule, but usually I try to say, we're going to reach out a certain number of times via email. And if I know the contact, I might stalk them a little bit more or call them. People hate to be called nowadays because email and Instagram and Twitter are so ubiquitous. So they really hate phone calls, but I will do that if I think this is perfect. Maybe they just had death in the family, or maybe they went to Antarctica and aren't getting their email. So I will call them. But eventually you have to understand that silence is their best no. And if you keep on, they're going to put you in email jail and block you. So sometimes, client, it is you. It is not me.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're not appealing to everyone. It just means to that particular producer, for whatever reason, it's not going to work.
It's a no. The second thing that I love is it is not always your publicist's fault. I know that is super appealing to think.
It's never your publicist's fault, right? I thought that was...
I think that people feel like... like I had this client the other day who was like, oh, I'm really good friends with so-and-so at this show. And so if you just tell them it's me, I'm like, I've told them it's you 14 times. Not really 14, more like 4. And they're still not wanting it. So it's like there's this ego barrier for a client when they can't receive the fact that that person that they went to band camp with does not want them on their show. And I want to be like, okay, then you call them, right? You call them. Because if you think they're going to have you on, then you call them. So this is also, I try to get clients to understand, let's pretend that if you don't have a blog that you do, what do you want to talk about on your blog? Do you want someone pitching you 14 times in a row about something like diapers for dogs? Are you going to talk about diapers for dogs on your blog? Because you're not, and you don't want to, and you're not going to respond. So then they're like, oh, I get it.
And it doesn't mean you don't like them.
Right. It's just not a fit.
It just doesn't fit.
The third thing that I would say is it is not fair to expect your publicist to ask for favors to get you on a show that you're not a fit for. So shows revolve around sponsorships and ratings. And if I were to say, hey, best friend that was in my wedding, can you put this author on your highly rated TV show? They're going to tell me no, and probably some other things too. And I honestly don't want to ruin my relationship with that producer and that show by putting someone on that I know will not deliver in that format. So I have expertise from being in this space for 26 years. It doesn't mean that client is not super amazing. They are. We don't take any clients we don't believe in, right, Jason?
Right.
So for me, I have to really educate them why they're not a fit, and then they have to trust me.
Yeah, and I, having been in that situation before too, obviously, sometimes I will enter into that conversation with a producer, and I will come in with a disclaimer. Hey, look, I know this probably isn't a fit. I get it. You know that they're paying me to ask, so let's just get it over with. If it's not a fit, it's okay. Is there anywhere else maybe in the, here at the network that maybe it is? If you point me the right direction, I'm more than happy to go that way. But this way, and sometimes maybe you'll be surprised.
Yeah, sometimes.
But yes, it puts us in a really bad position, and we can't play that card
too often.
Absolutely, yeah.
The other thing that I like to do is, especially with media that I know really well, I'll say, so I noticed you didn't hit me back on this any of the 13 times I've asked you. So tell me why it's not a fit. Because I'm getting that it's not a fit, but if you could just tell me why, that would really help my client.
Yeah.
Because in our reporting, we go very detailed on, here's exactly what they said. Because I find that it's almost like picture or it didn't happen. The way we look at reporting is reporting everything they said or didn't happen. So we are very, very granular on the reasons for the no's, because that's always the question that we get. And so when I was a client and I had PR firms, working on my behalf, I always wanted to know why. Not because I was challenging them, because I wanted to be better. I wanted my person to be better. And so if I could take the no and reframe that, which I'm a huge reframer, and turn that into a yes, then that's what I would try to do.
So what do you do in the situation where earlier we talked about their silence being their best no? If you don't get,
you just move on. So if you ask for an explanation and you don't get it, then you're sort of in the danger zone then, because if you push it, they're probably going to block you or just never take a client of yours again. And so our media relationships are the most sacred thing that we have, and we can't burn them for a client,
right?
Because then we can't serve anybody else. So I think you just use your best intuition. Everybody has that sort of internal gauge where they know they've sort of been a little extra in a situation, or they've got a little bit, more relationship equity they can use. And, for me, there are very few circumstances now where I will burn relationship equity to get more of an answer, because I usually have enough, knowledge of the game that I can give them a pretty educated guess as to why.
Yeah.
Or I've gotten enough preponderance of evidence from all the other media we're pitching that are saying no to be able to say extrapolation of, here's your answer. But it's important to know. So the fourth thing that I would say is, okay, let's say that you do pull strings and you get your author on that show. They have got to bring their A game, right? Because
yes.
I love it when they're like, oh, I forgot I had an interview today. You're like, oh my goodness, I just asked my cousin to put a word in, and you're not prepared.
Right.
So clients have got to be prepared and deliver.
Yeah, well, that's a big one, because we're out there selling the author. I'm telling the producer, hey, this guy's a great guest, and I mean that. I'm not telling a fib. If I didn't believe you were going to be a great guest, then I wouldn't have taken you on to begin with. But you got to be on your A game. If I tell them you're a great guest and you have all this wealth of knowledge and you're going to be such a resource for their audience, you got to have this guy on. You love him, and then all of a sudden he's on the air and he's awful.
Yeah.
Not only is my credibility damaged, the relationship is damaged a little bit. The trust factor is, their job is to produce a great television show. Now their boss is going to come down on them. Hey, why'd you book this guy?
Yeah.
Where'd this come from?
They got to deliver.
Right.
Or everybody's toast.
I'm putting them in a tough situation. So all the way down the line, you got to deliver. Whether it's 5:30 in the morning, and we've all been in that situation. The author doesn't want to do early morning interviews or late night interviews or whatever it may be. I don't care what time it is. You're paying us to get you on the air. We're putting our neck out there selling you to the producer.
Absolutely.
You got to deliver.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think those of us I find that a lot of publicists think the booking is the thing, and they don't do media training, and then they don't listen to the interview. And so we always do the training and we always listen to the interviews, because we give feedback, right? So if you have an expert or an author who's doing interviews and you don't give them feedback, it's like you don't complete the cycle to me. Like the circle of life of an interview, you have to have feedback for, hey, when you said that thing, you might want to do it shorter, and here's a suggested way that you might could think about doing it in the future. And that's just part of our job.
Yeah.
Our job does not end when we get the booking. So the fifth thing is be gracious and grateful, right? I wish I had a little sign that was made that said be gracious and grateful. And that goes for me too. But how you treat everyone matters. So when we're on site at a TV interview, let's say we're in New York at Today's Show, how you treat the doorman, how you treat the front desk receptionist, how you treat the makeup artist, for sure. You would be so surprised how many times I have gotten bad feedback from somebody treating a makeup artist disrespectfully. This is not as much for authors and experts as for my actors and actresses that are our clients. Word travels really fast about poorly behaved people. So I just, even if you don't mean it, say the words, be gracious and grateful, and we will all survive another day.
Well, first of all, it's just the right thing to do. Be a good person and treat people well. The gatekeepers are the folks that you got to be good to. Those are the ones that can get you in touch with someone that's hard to get in touch with, or that can, when there's a fire that you need help putting out, those are the folks that are going to serve you. Be good to people. You're right, and word does get around quickly in this business. If you're difficult to deal with, or if you're not someone folks enjoy having around, then you're probably
you're going to
be short-lived on the circuit. Yeah, for sure.
So the sixth thing, this is one that is really difficult for people to understand. And I wrote, 20-something years ago, the publicity sort of DIY manual at HarperCollins, which is Thomas Nelson, and it's still in circulation. They've edited it, but I found this statement that came back, and I was like, oh, that is probably literally, if I could boil down everything I've ever said, this is the most important thing ever, right here. You, the author or the guest, you are the prop on any radio and TV show you go on. Like, you are not the star. The host is always the star. So you are there to provide witty, playful banter or to give some expert analysis, but it is about them. So you have to, talk in sound bites, give them a chance to ask, another thing or get a word in edgewise. And you are there to make them look smart. So you say please and thank you. You're very gracious to them. And it is never, never, never about you.
Laugh at their jokes.
Yep. Send a thank you note. All the things. So for people that I deal with that are experts in their field or they are A-level actors, this is the hard one.
Because, I bet. Yeah. They're used to being the star. Right?
They are.
Yeah.
And when they go on a morning show, they're no longer the star.
Yeah.
And so they have to mentally make that shift. And I have the people who are best at media make that shift quickly. So, and it's a thing you have to learn. And once you learn it, though, it will take you so much further in your interviewing career than you could have ever done otherwise. Because once you understand that you are the prop, it really it takes, honestly, a load of pressure off of you. You don't have to carry this thing. Like, it's not your job to carry it. It is their job to carry it. It is their show. So you just got to be charming and fun and all the things. So, sorry, soapbox, but you can tell how passionate I am about that one. So the seventh thing your publicist should tell you, but probably won't, is timeliness matters. So if I say to a client, hey, your op-ed is due or your whatever is due this day, do not blow me off. I just had a client who was asked to write something for Time magazine. No joke. And they missed the deadline. And guess what? Oh. They wouldn't even consider it after. And so I cannot, that's a once a year thing for me. Like, even with all the kind of clients that we have, time is elusive. And it is so hard to get into. And I literally had to get on my knees over that one. And I was like, oh my goodness, why do I do what I do? And why do I do it here?
Yeah. Well, not to mention going back to what we said earlier, they put you in a bad situation now. Because, your client's the one that missed a deadline. And now that editor has a space to fill. They're in
last minute.
So now someone else is going to have to go and write something in a few hours or a day. That's going to be difficult for them and probably not as
so that was
good a final product.
That was somebody else's really amazing afternoon because they got a call saying, "Oh my goodness, now I'm in a pickle."
Yeah.
The eighth thing that I like to talk about is press materials are not consumer facing. So, we do press releases, we do pitches, we do bios, we do fact sheets, we do all kinds of suggested interview questions, fact sheets, whatever. And I have clients who get bent out of shape because it's not exactly how they would say it to a consumer. And I always say, it's not for the consumer. This is for the booker. This is for the producer. This is for the gatekeeper. And so I have to use specific language and angles they understand in a format they're used to, so that it gives you the opportunity to say your message when you get on the show. So the hook that we use to get the booking is very, very different than the message. And so once they understand that, they usually chill out a little bit. Have you had experience with that, Jason?
Yeah, I think there is something to understanding, and this is part of the reason that our PR Toolkit product, I think, is going to be so helpful for folks, is that there's something to being able to compose a document for a producer that says that includes everything they need to know. It's short, it's sweet, it gets right to the point, it includes all the right information. It's not the flowery language, it's not the the marketing verbiage and all of the it's the producers, they give you about 30 seconds of their attention, and if you haven't gotten them by then, they've moved on. So what is it? Who's the person?
Yep.
Why should I have them on my show? What are they going to say? Why is it relevant to my audience? Let's get right to it,
Yep.
There's something about being able to craft that kind of a document that's not just anyone can do. So, yes, when that author who has spent hours painstakingly crafting the perfect paragraph or the right, they get it back and it's been edited down, it's been cut down to a sentence or two that's not sexy, that's not, doesn't have all the beautiful language, hurts their feelings a little bit. And that's what they want the producer to see, but that's not what that's not what the producer wants to see. So yeah, absolutely. It goes back to what you said earlier about the ego thing, so 100%.
But it's a two-way street because a lot of publicists have ego, right? And this next point really gets to that. So number 9 is, please always tell your publicist if you have a cousin twice removed who is a booker at a show, or if you have friends that work at media outlets. And don't let us stumble into that. And then, because the ego part comes in where I have pitched, and you've held out on me. And then you say, oh, wait, but I know someone I'm really close to at that show. I'm like, dude, then why didn't you tell me? Or you book yourself, right? You think I'm not doing my job, and you get the booking. And that is like, that's the moment where I want to crawl in the hole, because I have been beating my head against that particular wall for weeks. And you get the booking and I'm super excited. Yay, we got the booking. And then I'm also like, oh man, it looks like I didn't do my job. Yeah. So that is a hard one for me. Yeah. And I have never really found a great way around it, other than like, we ask a lot of questions up front. Who do you know? How close are you with them? So that, because you are your best tool. So we are there to make the load equitable and easy. But if you know someone, that personal relationship is going to trump me every time. And I have no problem with it. Yeah.
Well, and selfishly, as a publicist, I always like to, I like to make new friends. That's a great value to me. So if you have someone you can introduce me to there, that's great. Now, all of a sudden, my list of contacts at that outlet is a little bit deeper. And at the same time, too, you can't go around your publicist and book things for yourself, because how do you know I haven't booked something in a different network already on that day or that time, or that I didn't tell that other network that they could be first, or that you got to work through me. And it's not an ego thing. It's just, you're paying me to do this, and we got to do it this way. You got to funnel it through me, because I know what's happening and when, and what relationships need to be stroked first, and you got to run it through us.
It does happen. So you're totally right. So the last thing, this is a good one, is just please remember interview etiquette. So don't cancel 24 hours prior. Be low maintenance. Don't bring an entourage. So your publicist probably doesn't want to have to tell you not to bring an entourage when you have to do media tours, but they should, because it makes you look sort of silly. And then obviously be friendly to everyone from the greeter and beyond. So those are the top 10 things your publicist should tell you, but probably won't.
That's a great list. That's and the thing is, most of our listeners don't have a publicist, and they're not going to have a publicist. But these are all things, if they're going to be their own, that they need to understand, because they're not going to have someone holding their hand through this process. Really, really important for them to hear all of those things, and whether that, and these are true, whether it's the Today Show, whether it's Good Morning Toledo. It's the same. And
here's what I would say to your, like, we're talking about big things, and it just hit me that maybe someone out there is feeling discouraged. Like, I will never be on that show, or Time is never going to want me. Like, it doesn't matter. Start where you are. Everybody starts somewhere. And in fact, even with my really big clients, I don't start them out. Today's show is not the first thing they do. Like, we do some practice runs. We do some smaller shows, because I need to see them practice their messaging before I put them, in the spotlight, even if they're, A-level actors. So I would just say, be very encouraged. Nothing is too small. Then we have some authors or experts who say, oh, that show's too small for me. Well, it really isn't, because, everything has now gone global with the internet. And so you may think that little tiny paper doesn't matter, but it does. Because what if you're supposed to reach one person in that town that you never would have reached without doing that interview? So I'm a real big proponent of doing all the things that make sense to do. And big is not always better.
No, and one of the points that I make with a lot of my author clients is, they'll be quick to say no to a radio show with an audience of 12,000 people. At the same time, if they were to book a speaking engagement in an arena with 12,000 people, they'd be there in a heartbeat.
Thank you.
What's the difference? And
I think too, like, some of those shows, it's not about how many listeners or what, how wide the radius. It's about how engaged is the listenership. And so if they have a very engaged Facebook page in that community, that makes all the difference. And so also, if you know that radio station is going to promote them a certain number of times on the air before the interview, and they're going to do something on the web page, like, all of that is taken into consideration before we ever ask a client to lift one finger. And if we didn't think it was worth their time, we would never bring it to them. because I certainly don't want to waste my time booking it. And so I don't book something that I don't think they should do.
Yeah, that seems like probably a good place for us to wrap our conversation on content creation, and we could go on and on this topic. But if you had to summarize everything that we've talked about in a minute, to give our listeners a takeaway, as they're beginning their journey, to become an author or influencer, speaker, whatever it is they aspire to become, what is it that you would tell them?
I'd say make a decision. So do some active listening, figure out what you want to say and who needs to hear it, and then make a decision that you're going to do it. And that then creates a mindset where you can't fail. Easily said, not so easily done. But call Jason if you have a problem.
Right. I like that. That's a great place to wrap it up. Thank you, Jennifer.
Hey, thank you. This has been really fun. Thanks for having me.